Hello, Misfits and Megafauna. My name is TV Sky, and there's a new skin coming to the Odyssey skin line in League of Legends. Now, people have been asking me to talk about the alternate universe skins in League of Legends for quite a long time, and I've sort of never really been able to find time and space to do it, but Galaxy Slayer Zed provides us with an interesting opportunity to talk a little bit about not just him as a character and as a character design, but also about the problems with storytelling in a universe like Odyssey, when the primary method of advancing the story that you have is adding more content to it, in terms of like skins and game modes and stuff like that. And Galaxy Slayer Zed presents an interesting question in that case. Still, we're going to proceed along the relatively normal lines that we proceed along in these sort of semi-what's the deal videos. That is to say, we're going to talk about the lore around Galaxy Slayer Zed first. We're going to talk a little bit about the Odyssey lore in general. We're going to talk about how he sort of fits in, what kind of character he's supposed to be, what his character design is supposed to be representing, and then we'll look at his character design itself to sort of make an evaluation of how well it manages to communicate the kind of character he's supposed to be. And along the lines of that, sort of along the way, in my typical rambly style, we will be discussing a little bit about the Odyssey universe in general, how Zed fits into it, or maybe how he doesn't fit into it so well. So, here we go. To start with, let's have a little recap of what the Odyssey universe even is. It's a universe that was launched not too very long ago with an animated short from Riot, setting up sort of the basic premise of the universe and the characters involved and what's going on, what are the character dynamics at play, and it did an absolutely amazing job of setting up the Odyssey universe as it exists for us now. It did an excellent job of introducing the different characters. It took the form of Jinx basically doing a presentation video to poor Sona about who are the crew of the Odyssey, who's this guy chasing us, and what does he want, and like, what are we then gonna do about this whole thing? To sum it up very briefly, Shida Kane, the guy up here, is the main villain of the piece. He's an inquisitor from the Demaxian Empire. Not the Demacian Empire, the Demaxian Intergalactic Empire, who is like one of the enforcers, one of the people who's most responsible for basically suppressing rebellion in the galaxy. He goes out on a mission to a strange planet somewhere out in space, where he runs into some Templars. Templars are Sona's order, the order that Sona is from, who are sort of connected to the Aura, which is this magical space sci-fi resource that can do magic stuff and makes faster the light travel possible and powers the empires of the various galaxies and yada yada yada. He encounters her, but he also encounters something else. In the depths of this planet, he finds a very strange scythe, which starts talking to him, and now he's crazy. The scythe, of course, is Rast, who is a crossover from the Darkstar universe, as far as we can tell, who wants to end the entire universe, because that's how Rast do. And Kane, for his part, is not really interested in ending the universe, but he is interested, or rather becomes corrupted into being interested in gaining as much power for himself as possible and becoming Emperor of the known galaxy. He wants to depose Jarvan IV, who's the Emperor of the Demaxian Empire, and install himself instead and gain ultimate power by absorbing as much aura as possible, while going progressively more crazy in the process. And Rast has obsessed on Sona because he believes Sona holds the key to the Aura Gate, which is this magical artifact somewhere out in space that can let him obtain ultimate power, or at least so he thinks. Rast, for his part, wants the Aura Gate because he believes it is a means for him to open a portal back to his home dimension and end the entire universe. Sona, for her part, is rescued by the crew of the Odyssey, and now you've got this sort of misfit underdog travel story where the crew of the Odyssey and Sona are sort of fleeing across the galaxy in an Avatar-style plot, trying to get to the place where they need to go and do the hero thing, while being crazy misfit weirdo characters who have all kinds of silly misadventures out in space, and there's lots of space stuff going on, and space monsters, and space science, and space magic, and all kinds of good space stuff. And that's sort of the setup for the Odyssey universe. Siggs, by the way, is an engineer whose life is more or less ruined by the crew of the Odyssey, and they kind of just pick him up and tag him along. He's not really that important to the story. My point is, the Odyssey universe teaser did a fantastic job of establishing the relationships between all these characters. Like, Jinx has a massive crush on Kane, and Kane just wants to murder absolutely everyone and everything, and Yasuo has this whole thing with his brother going on that we don't really know about, but it's sort of a tragedy that kind of motivates him to be who he is. And Malphite is the big, dumb, but also fun, kind, and loving guy, and Sona is the sort of mystical space princess who needs to do the magic thing to save the day. There's a strong set of character dynamics, there's a strong set of character archetypes, and there's a strong set of character tropes underpinning this universe. So how does Zed fit into all of this? Well, let's take a look at him. His blood type is aura, but edgier. His hobby is talking to himself. Clones, so many clones, and he has contempt for the weak. So Zed was raised by the Templar Order, same as Sona. He's from the Templar Order, and he was a super good pupil. He did all of the stuff good. He's a good Templar, and then the Templar said, hey dude, as a final test, you're gonna go out into the space, out around places, and you're gonna protect one of the megafauna. Megafauna are these mystical magic creatures that are old beyond the count of the stars, and which contain just massive amounts of the aura, like that powerful space resource that everybody wants. Zed is like, okay, I'll go protect that thing and make sure it doesn't die. And then he goes to it, and he's ambushed by some soldiers from the Demaxian Empire who's like, hey, we're gonna kill that thing and steal all its aura. And Zed, apparently seeing no other option, is like, well, I've been sent here to protect this thing and make sure it doesn't die, but these guys are gonna kill it, so my best option is to kill it first, so they can't kill it and steal its aura. You're not supposed to do that when you're a Templar, but Zed does it anyway. He's like, okay, well, if I can't protect you, then I'll kill you myself. And in the ensuing explosion, as he kills the megafauna, he's consumed by a massive explosion of aura that infuses his entire body, steals his mind, makes him completely crazy. He considers himself in the plural, like now. He's no longer a person, but a sort of hive mind kind of creature. He's become a monster. He's become a monstrous entity capable of swift and deadly destruction. He wears essentially a suit made of aura that's all kind of stuck inside him that transforms into all the blades and shurikens and clones and stuff that he needs for his powers. So he's basically got this massive delusional megalomaniacal, I am the most powerful, perfect creature in the universe, and I will cleanse the galaxy of everything that isn't like me or isn't strong enough to resist me thing going on. And, like, so we've got a dangerous sociopath who's been infected with powers beyond his reasoning, primarily powered by his own inadequacies, who's in conflict with the crew of the Odyssey because he desires control over the magic space resource that everybody desires control over. In theory, that's a solid pitch for a villain. The trouble is, we already have that in the Odyssey universe. Zed's blood type is aura, but edgier. Kane's blood type is mostly aura also, and he's also edgy. And like we already said, like Kane is pulled across the galaxy. He follows the silent whispers of a strange esoteric power. He believes this process will turn him into an invincible, immortal being. Zed, for his part, has the interdimensional whispers of aura guiding him across deep space, where he's become a monstrous entity capable of swift and deadly destruction. They have so many overlaps. Like, just like you have Kane, who's been corrupted by this ancient power that he doesn't quite understand, and Zed, who has been corrupted by this ancient power that he doesn't quite understand. You have Kane, who's being driven slowly insane by his own inadequacies and the corruption of the magical artifact he possesses that he doesn't have any means to control. And Zed is the exact same way. You have Kane, who is sort of, rather than being one person with one mind, is two people with two minds, because he's both Kane and Rost, and those two different personalities are wrestling for control over him. And Zed, for his part, is also not one person anymore, but many minds contained in one in one creature. He refers to himself as we. Zed is obsessed with power. He's obsessed with cleansing the galaxy of everything that isn't powerful, and Kane is obsessed with power and obsessed with cleansing the galaxy of everyone who isn't as powerful and perfect as he is. Like, it's... And the trouble is, Kane has a really well-established dynamic with the other characters on the Odyssey. Like, there's the crush on Jinx, there's his fixation on Sona. They have already shared a story. Like, Kane is the reason why Sona had to go on the run in the first place, right? And, like, Kane is an inquisitor with the Demaxian Empire. So he has a connection to that sort of semi-fascist, semi-Star Wars Empire-ish, you know, controlling group of bureaucrats and power mongers in the galaxy. So he's connected to the power network, to the powerful, to the high and the mighty, to the higher class beings of the universe. Whereas the crew of the Odyssey are all these sort of semi-working class, lower class, disgraced former X and disgraced former that, and crazy people and misfits and broken people who are sort of doing this underdog story to try and get away from him. And Zed is connected to an ancient magical order who also has control over one of the most powerful. Like, the overlap between these two villains is so strong that they feel like the same character in two different concepts. Now, there might be a point to that, in the sense that in our normal League of Legends universe, Zed and Kayn are from the same order, and, you know, Kayn is Zed's pupil and aspires to be just like Zed, and there's a thing there. And I can also see that you could have a dynamic, which would be funny and interesting, if you had, instead of one stereotypical space fantasy villain pursuing the crew of the Odyssey, you have two space fantasy villains pursuing the crew of the Odyssey and getting in each other's way and fighting each other over who gets to kill the crew of the Odyssey and claim the Aura Gate and yada yada yada, and sort of tripping over each other's ambition. The trouble is, and this is the big problem with storytelling in the Odyssey universe by adding skins to it, Zed has no established dynamic with anyone else in the Odyssey crew. Not even in his lore, really. Like, the only connection Zed has directly to any other character on the Odyssey's crew is that he's a member of the Templars, same as Sona. But as far as we know, he doesn't know her personally. That's not really part of his story. You have some voice lines that imply that Zed knows stuff about Yasuo and Yasuo's background and something about Sona, and he has these taunts for the other characters, but because the other skins came out first, they don't have any taunts for him. They don't have any voice lines about him. They have nothing in their dialogue. They have nothing in the stories that were written for them that implies the existence of Zed, or gives a reason why Zed would have an antagonistic dynamic with these characters. And that, again, is the problem, is like, you have this post hoc, or rather, you have, I'm looking for a fancy Latin term that evades me, but you have this problem of one thing comes first, and then everything that comes after is based on it, but the thing that comes first is not altered to accommodate for the thing that comes next, right? And so what is Zed's dynamic with the rest of the Odyssey skins? It's not really known. It's not really clear. He's just kind of Kayn again, but without the charm. And that's the other trouble with the Zed version that we've got going on here, where Kayn has this manic sort of patter with himself where he's constantly arguing with Rast, and he's crazy with power, but you can also kind of see where where there's a little bit of tragedy to him, because you also, in the short story that we got about the Odyssey universe, we see what kind of person was lost when Rast corrupted him, and we sort of get glimpses of the honorable man he once was, and there's a lot of stuff going on with this character there. Zed, on the other hand, is just like, all of his voice lines are like, blah, I am an evil monster badass who's gonna kill all the weak ones, blah. Like, he's just got that one track of he's just an evil, dangerous, badass villain, and there's nothing more to him. So Zed is a cool skin, like, there's a cool idea there of having him be like a direct expression of Aura itself, perhaps, like having some deep mystical connection to this magical resource that is kind of at the center of everything that's going on there. Zed could have been a good villain to launch the Odyssey universe with. He could have been a fine villain for that, because he is like the evil space ninja entity who's chasing them across the galaxy to yada yada do whatever. That could work, but Kayn is already kind of standing in that role and doing a much better job at being an interesting character at the same time. So, in terms of the lore, and in terms of how he fits into the alternate universe, Zed kind of falls down flat a little bit, because think of, if you think of Odyssey as a TV show, or as a movie, or as an ongoing series of stories, as a series of comic books, or whatever, where does Zed happen in the boss order? Like, because the dynamic that's set up at the start is that Rast is literally a threat to the entire galaxy. Like, he comes from the Darkstar universe. If Rast manages to get control of the Aura Gate, he will attempt to destroy the entire galaxy. He's a galaxy-scale threat. He's an end boss level of threat. And Kayn, of course, himself is growing more and more powerful progressively as he chases the crew of the Odyssey across the galaxy, because he's absorbing more and more aura. He's becoming more and more powerful. He's becoming more and more insane. He's becoming more and more dangerous. He's the natural fit for a final boss, like the one you have the final confrontation with him, climactic at the Aura Gate. The stakes is the entire fate of the universe. Everyone's using their powers to the fullest. Everyone has to, like, completely make sacrifices and have to come together. Like, all of this good narrative meat. I can imagine that happening at the end of the story in the final confrontation with Kayn, and maybe a dramatic moment at the end where they manage to free Kayn from Rast's control finally, and Kayn is like, oh my god, what have I done? And sacrifices himself to save the galaxy. Something like that. A good dramatic ending to the thing. Where does Zed fit into that? Because Zed is also, you know, powered by the aura. He has the connection to the Aura Gate. He's very, very powerful and dangerous. So where does he fit into the the narrative arc of the Odyssey? Is he a mid-boss? Like, is he the guy they meet sort of at the middle, who's this powerful foe they have to begin to learn to come together to overcome? But if he's defeated there, like, then he's just a mid-boss. Then he's not really... Where does he fit in the narrative arc? Like, what arc in the 4th season of the show would they have to fight Zed in order to accomplish what thing? Like, what's his relationship? And that's very, very unclear. Part of the reason for all of this, of course, is that all we have is the voice lines and the bio on the Odyssey page. Like, that's all we have. We don't have any short stories. We don't have any animated shorts. We don't have anything. And maybe Riot are planning something like that to sort of fill in the holes, the very many gaps in the structure and the dynamic of this universe that Zed is kind of raising. But for the moment, as a story element in the Odyssey universe, Zed is just kind of an expression of the problem with trying to do storytelling by just adding more characters and more skins onto the Odyssey universe. A better way to do it, I think, rather than adding new characters through skins, I would add another set of Odyssey skins representing, like, this is the characters at the start of their journey as they're beginning to journey towards, like, the end game of the universe. But then at the halfway point, release a new set of skins where you can see how they've changed. They've gained new armor, weapons, they have different attitudes, they have different voice lines, they have references to adventures that they've been on. Like, in terms of advancing the story, I think it's better to add stuff to characters that are already in the story rather than just bolt on a bunch of extra characters. Like, imagine if we get 10 more skins in the Odyssey universe, right? Maybe that takes a few years, but imagine if we get 10 more. Then we'll have 10 more characters where we have to ask all of these questions all over again. How do they fit into the central core character dynamic of the Odyssey crew and Kain? How do they relate to Zed? How do they relate to Kain? How do they relate to the central conflict in the universe? And the problem is, so long as you don't advance the story in the universe, you can't deepen anything. You can't make any connections deeper. You can't find someone who's more deeply connected to something. You can only just kind of branch out like a spider web. You can only grab things that are further away, right? You can only make things that are more and more peripherally associated with the universe. You can't make stuff that's more deeply associated with it. And that's the problem of storytelling in skins. Anyway, let's actually talk about how this guy looks and what his aesthetics say. So, as you remember, hopefully, the Zed character here is that he was this monk guy who was possessed by aura. This living substance essentially sort of corrupts his mind and becomes a living weapon that sort of lives on him, almost like a venom symbiote or something along those lines, that transforms itself in order to give him the weapons that he has. We can indeed see that in the intro sequence to his login screen, where he absorbs a bunch of aura, and zoop, it creates all the weapons that he'll ever need, all the blades and stuff. Okay, so that's fairly cool. How does that play out in terms of his character design? Well, Skin Spotlights, fortunately, has wonderful videos showcasing that kind of thing. Link to that video down in the description, by the way. And on the one hand, Zed works perfectly well. Like, he works okay for the thing that he does. Like, he does look like he's got some kind of semi-organic thing going on with it. Like, he's wearing a suit that's sort of a little bit too closely connected to him to be a suit. He also wears little remnants of his old monk uniform. You can see the hood going on up there. You can see, like, if you can find a good angle on it. That's the trouble when you can't control the camera for yourself. Let's see. Get over here. Yeah, there, you can see he wears sort of the remnants of a monk-like, sort of monastery-like outfit, of an outfit that would suit the same order that Sona comes from. You can see how there's this attempt to fuse the aesthetics of that ancient order, which is portrayed with Sona especially, with the idea of him sort of wearing living weapons on him. And his animations do a good job of conveying this as well, especially in something like his recall animation, which I think I can find somewhere. You can see that kind of thing at play. But the thing that's managed really well is that Zed likes to jump in and out of his suit. Like, he's got plenty of animations that make his suit go away for a second, and then he kind of comes back onto his body. So, like, that gives you a good sensation of that idea of his suit is this living thing that's bonded to him in a way. That's then when we run into a few problems, because generally, while he definitely looks like a badass end boss kind of character-ish, he doesn't really look like he necessarily belongs in the Odyssey universe. And that's the big problem that I have with Galaxy Slayer Zed, is that compared to this, all of this stuff, well, you have this very specific, like, you have all of the sort of high-tech sci-fi stuff going on, but the characters are also wearing, like, leather jackets and cargo pants and, like, stuff that looks relatively contemporary and modern, but filtered through the lens of a sci-fi space fantasy universe. Like, Jinx is wearing a crop top and some pants with, like, some belts on it. Kain is wearing a sort of Space Inquisitor outfit number 356 from the standard outfit page. Malphite has this vest thing going on and pants and gloves. They all look sort of relatively established in a sort of Guardians of the Galaxy-like space fantasy thing. Zed, though, there's nothing here to really tell me sci-fi. There's nothing here that really tells me that he belongs to a sci-fi universe, or that he belongs to, indeed, the Odyssey universe. He doesn't really share any color coordination with the other characters. He only really has the gold of the aura thing going on for him. He's not really got any other markers of high tech or any belonging to it, but he's also not really, he doesn't also doesn't really look like he's using aura as his primary weapon. Like, I can completely see how the substance of aura could be shaped into the things that Zed is wearing. Like, I can see how you could shape it into these long claws and stuff, but the primary visual we have of aura is this formless liquid that floats almost like a black hole in space, golden but also dark on the inside. That's present both in Kain, who absorbs it almost as a mist that coils through the air, Sona, who controls it like a liquid, and then on Zed, it doesn't look like any of those things. It doesn't look like it's liquid. It doesn't look like it's really sort of alive or biological in any sense. It looks like metal. It just looks like metal. Like, this looks like a glove with some claws on it that someone forged, that someone made in a smithy. These look like man-made blades. And there's partially a point to that in the sense that Zed is the one shaping the aura into this stuff. Like, so he's giving it a man-made shape, but it diminishes the idea of Zed being essentially bonded to the aura almost like a parasite. And that's something that's sort of frustratingly on display, actually, especially in his recall animation. If you look at this bit right here, right? You see how all of a sudden the aura takes on this sort of insect-like facet of, like, these four legs lifting him up, almost where it finally looks more like it's a living creature that's sort of acting on Zed, rather than just being a bunch of metal armor that he's just kind of wearing. But at all other times with Zed, really, none of that liquidity is there. None of that liquid sort of flowing feeling is there. It's not coiling over his form, kind of snaking its way off his body. The thing I'd prefer is, for example, if, like, when you're dealing with his animations and his attack animations, that he doesn't have his blades out all the time, that he's just got his hands normally without the blades on them, and then when he goes to attack, the weapon grows out of his arm organically. Or, like, that when he's far away from enemies that he can see, then his armor kind of recedes and his head comes out. Like, something that makes the armor feel more alive and liquid, rather than right now, where in everything from the animations to indeed the illustration, it just looks like metal. Like, it just looks like hard, static metal that has no particular life or fluidity to it. I would also like it if Zed's little the magical spinning things that he's got on his back, if they looked more like they were made of aura as well. Like, instead of being these very highly defined, sharp shapes, that they were also liquid. Like, they were just liquid aura orbs floating behind his back, instead of being these hard shapes that are going on. Because he's not a bad skin. I want to stress that. He's not a bad skin at all. He looks really cool. He does look like, in terms of, like, what kind of character he is, yes, that could definitely be the character design of someone who's been corrupted by some kind of space ooze that is magical. Sure. But he doesn't look like an Odyssey character. He doesn't look like he's connected to the aura, specifically. He doesn't look like he's connected to sci-fi. And when you add that up with the conspicuous lack of connection to the other characters that is going on in his, in his lore and his story, he's just not a very compelling addition to the Odyssey universe. Like, I think he would just have stood much better on his own as, like, a cosmic Zed skin of some kind. Like a cosmic Zed skin, except evil cosmic or something like that. Because the connection to, like, his critical attack animation finally shows a little bit of that animal sensation with the suit lashing out against his enemies, but it's so slight, and there's so little of it. So yeah, Zed he's like a good skin. He's a cool skin. He looks cool. He's got a cool design going on. I like the idea that he's super pale underneath the armor because it sort of sucked the life out of him. By the way, go subscribe to Skin Spotlights if you haven't already. I'm sure you have, but so much of him is just not Odyssey. It's not really connected to it. He doesn't really feel like he's part of it. He doesn't feel like he belongs there, and that to me is kind of a big disappointment. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, feel free to hit the like, comment, subscribe, yada yada, bell icon, do all the YouTube stuff. It's tedious to ask for, but it does help. Like, for YouTubers, ask because it helps. It's the nature of the business. It's how we do our jobs. You can also, if you want to support the channel more directly, you can head on over to Patreon to do like a monthly subscription thing, which I would be very grateful for. If you have like $1 a month, as I usually say at the end of my videos, then $1 a month is worth like 1,000 to 2,000 views for a YouTuber like me. Like, it's worth so much more than just watching the videos, and even a little bit helps us a lot. So whether it's me or another YouTuber that you like, please consider supporting us directly. If you don't want to sign up for a monthly subscription, I've also got a tip jar down below where you can just go there. There's a couple of links. You can go there and give me like a one-time direct donation to say, hey, you did a good job on the thing that you did with the thing. Hooray for you. That would be very nice also. If you don't want to do any of that, or you can't, of course, don't worry about it. I consider all of it a gift, and it is enough that you have just watched the video. It's just, if you want to go above and beyond, then the donations are there for that. But just watch the videos. It's okay. Just like, subscribe. That's all. All of that is more than good enough. Anyway, if you have not enjoyed this video, well, there's a dislike button down below that you can click on in order to express your dislike to the YouTube algorithm. Now, recently, the dislike button has been a little bit like, if you click the dislike button and it starts ranting to you about how it's going to, you know, wipe the unworthy from the galaxy and you will be the first one to die when its time comes and stuff like that, honestly, just ignore it. I think it got hit by a meteor from space and now it's consumed by some galaxy-ending threat power that wants to wipe out all human life, but like, it's a dislike button. What's it gonna do? HTML5 at us or something? So don't worry about it. Like, but if it does, like, check if it's growing a little bit of a spike or something. Like when you try to press it and there's a spike there, because that is poisonous. It won't kill you, but you'll get really bad diarrhea. So I would avoid that. Thank you very much for watching.